is the Bottom Line Podcast. I'm Jimmy Finizzi alongside Neil Villapiano. We hope you're doing well. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to us. We really do appreciate it. Before we get started, questions, opinions, Twitter at BottomLineWMCX, at The NVP Show, and on Instagram at BottomLineWMCX, hashtag Bottom Line. Voice message on Anchor, the app, or at anchor.fm. And please make sure you leave a like and a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. And please subscribe to YouTube as well as on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just include my first name, Jimmy, when searching for this podcast. So before we get started with our top 5 list today, just a couple of really quick things to get out of the way here first. First of all, if you are in Texas or Louisiana and you are in the path of Hurricane Laura, and I know that Hurricane Marco is not that far off either, and we know those storms are pretty bad. And I saw footage in Louisiana. I mean, my God, that absolutely looks dreadful. I would not want to be caught in that storm. I know like 500,000 people were forced to evacuate, and rightfully so. So Neil and I send our deepest thoughts and prayers to those who are affected by the storm. To those who have evacuated, we hope that you are safe and sound with your families and your loved ones. So we definitely send our thoughts and prayers to those affected by not just Hurricane Laura, but Hurricane Marco as well. And I know this is not a political podcast. We're not going to get too much into this. I just want to say this quick, because Neil and I have already said our piece about this topic here. Let's just say that, you know, we know what's going on right now in the world, and it's still sickening us. And all we're going to say is that we want change, and we're not going to stop until we get it. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And, you know, our thoughts and prayers go out to the state of Wisconsin and what's happening there. Neil, real quick, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just literally, as you were just talking, I just got an alert from ESPN that the players in the NBA have decided that they are going to continue the playoffs.
I just got that too, which is good.
I don't know like how this is going to go down, but I think the NBA, I definitely understand the reasoning behind protesting last night, not playing. Same thing with the WNBA, Major League Soccer, several games in Major League Baseball as well. But I'm happy that they're deciding to continue, not because as a sports fan, but I'm talking about it as a person and as somebody who's understanding of what's going on right now. If they had chose to stop playing, you're letting the people who are complaining about the fact that they keep bringing these very difficult discussions up every day, you're letting them win. What the NBA and everybody's doing by continuing to play is that they continue to be at the center of attention, the center of the country,
and they continue to be proactive with the message about change.
Exactly, they can just continue to do so, and I think that's what I'm happy about, is that they'll continue to be able to do it. I'm not saying they wouldn't have been able to do it if they left the bubble and then just went out and did, protesting, but they collectively decided to come back and continue to play. And I hope that, now that they've had a moment of like understanding that, hey, we need to do more, we all need to continue to do more. I hope that I see it more. I hope I see, the topics being brought up more. I hope that we continue to have conversations a lot more. I hope that continues, and I think it will. But I think the NBA made the right decision to continue to play from the standpoint of being able to continue to promote social justice and continuing to make real change and continue to promote real change and voting and everything like that. So I just wanted to say that really quick. So I think that was the right choice by the NBA.
No, absolutely, 100% agree. But again, Neil and I have already said our piece about this. You can go check it out if you want for yourselves. But again, we're not going to stop till we get change, and damn it, we want it bad. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get into what we really wanted to do today, and that would be another top 5. I feel like we haven't done one of these in like a month, or it's been like a month since we did our last top 5 list, if I'm not mistaken.
We've had a lot of different guests over the last couple of weeks, so we haven't really had time
that's true. No, that's true. And by the way, we're inching closer and closer to the big 200. So again, nothing nothing official yet. Neil and I are still working out some details on what we're going to exactly do, but stay tuned for announcements on Twitter and Instagram for that. But 200, man, 200 episodes. I still cannot believe it. But anyway, we'll get to that when the time comes. But today's top 5 list is the top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Now, full disclosure, this was a beast. This was a beast of a list to put together because, dear God, there are so many terrific coaches, past, present, and hey, there might be terrific coaches in the future as well. But Neil and I are going all out. We're going all over sports. I don't care what time period we go in. We're going all out with this list. Neil, I know that your list isn't necessarily in, a particular order. Mine particularly is because, hey, that's just how I roll. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Neil, as always, if you do not mind, my good friend, I will kick things off with my list of the top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Again, full disclosure, this was a beast, and this is strictly our own opinion. You are more than welcome to agree or disagree or leave your own list if you want on Twitter and Instagram as well. So here we go. Number 5 on my list, top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Number 5 is the late, great Bill Walsh, head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He may have coached under 10 seasons with them, but here's what he accomplished. He finished with a record of 102, 63-1. He won 6 division titles, 3 NFC championship titles, and 3 Super Bowl championships. He won Coach of the Year in 1981 and 1984, and he also was the guy that popularized the West Coast offense, which in today's modern-day NFL doesn't really work all that much, but back in his time, it was absolutely dangerous. His style was basically more making it focused on the short horizontal passes and stretching out the defenses, and that worked during his time. Today's NFL probably wouldn't work all that much, but during his era and what he did with that team, it worked, and that's what made him a legendary coach with the 49ers. Bill Walsh is number 5 on my list.
I think with Bill Walsh, the biggest accomplishment out of everything was the fact that he understood how, the type of game the NFL was playing at the time, which was, they were much more of a ground and pound, type of game. And they were looking for, passes that were not long bombs or anything like that. And I think what Bill Walsh saw is that he saw an offense that he could create that could exploit how these defenses, were reacting. And one of the things that was interesting is, and people, I don't know how many people actually know this, is that Bill Walsh implemented and created the West Coast offense while he was the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep.
At the time, they had a quarterback. Well, he was the backup quarterback, Virgil Carter, who didn't have a big arm, was pretty accurate. So they created an offense and devised an offense based around him and based around what he could do, which is, the short vertical passing game, dump it off to, the running back, have guys make the yards after the catch. So a lot of the time it's the slant games and everything like that. So that, that's what it really was. And then he took it to another level, Bill Walsh, once he got to San Francisco and was able to get the talent that he did, with Joe Montana and, Jerry Rice eventually, and Taylor and, Dwight Clark and Roger Craig. And then also, he still had success as well with someone like Steve Young, albeit not as much, but obviously still Steve Young was able to understand it. And for the West Coast offense for quarterbacks, it was all about feet. Bill Walsh is very big on it. If this play says that you need to take a 7-step drop, you don't do like 5 and a hop. You do 7 steps, because once you get back on that 7th step, you could just throw the ball. And one of the things that Steve Young said one time about it is that if I just got you guys to do exactly that I tell you to do, I can easily tell you what's going to happen on this play, regardless of what the defense is showing.
Exactly.
He can tell you by timing and by footwork that you can that this play is going to go for 80 yards and a touchdown. And if you step back and you're correct and you do the 7-step drop and you just throw it up, he's going to be open because these players were capable, talent-wise, of being able to do what Bill Walsh did. So Bill Walsh created that dynasty in San Francisco in the 80s, and just it was a very dominant team, a team that now maybe before Bill Walsh came didn't have a great fan base, a big fan base, but is now has a tremendous fan base that there are a lot of 49ers fans. There's, in the Bay Area, and they're a big, well-known team. And I think that Bill Walsh had a lot to do with that. And, obviously the West Coast offense is not big nowadays because NFL defenses have caught up. And that was something that, Steve Young said it did take defenses 10, 15 years to really catch up. So by the time they did catch up, the 49ers had already won a multitude of Super Bowls and had the success that they did. But it was just one of those situations where Bill Walsh was able to exploit what the defense was giving him, and that's how it goes. And that's the mark of a good coach. Another good mark of a good coach is to take the players that you have and devise a system based on it. So like I said, with Virgil Carter as his quarterback in Cincinnati, he was able to devise an offense around him and the players that he had. The same thing happened once he went to Stanford and was a head coach, and also when he became the head coach of the 49ers. So Bill Walsh is not only one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, no doubt about it. He is certainly one of the greatest minds in sports history, considering what he was able to do. So that was so I have no issue with you going with Bill Walsh there.
Absolutely. He is number 5 on my list. Top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Deservedly so. Bill Walsh definitely belongs on here. Number 4. I might have to give you a bit of a history lesson. Not you, Neil, because you probably know about this. In case you don't, though, let's go back in time to the 1950s and the 1960s to a team named the Montreal Canadiens when they had a head coach named Hector Toe Blake. Now, if you don't know who Toe Blake is, let me give you a little bit of history about him.
Toe Blake? I would have never guessed you going with that.
Yeah, but a bit surprising, right? Well, in case you don't know who Toe Blake is, he used to be a player for the Montreal Canadiens. Well, before that, he actually played for the Montreal Maroons, but when he got traded to the Canadiens, he became a superstar. He at the time of his retirement, he was second all-time in scoring in the NHL. Like I said, at the time of his retirement.
Right. And now he's like, what, 30th or something? Like,
I'm not exactly sure where he ranks. I have to do research on that. But as a player, you talk about pairing up with guys like Elmer Locke and Maurice the Rocket Richard. I mean, the punchline, I mean, what more can you ask for right there? But once he became a coach, I mean, he just took it up to a whole new level. He was the head coach of the Canadiens from 1955 to 1968. He was one of the most successful coaches in NHL history. He won 8 Stanley Cups in 13 years, including 5 in a row from 1956 to 1960, which, by the way, was the year that the Rocket Richard retired. So what a way for him to go out, winning his 5th cup in a row. Toe Blake, his style was tough, fair, and disciplined. He was old school. He told you like it is. And you know what? It was well respected back then. I'm not sure. Well, maybe David Quinn, because David Quinn's kind of like that too. He tells it like it is. He's not afraid to bench you if you're not doing well. But I digress about that. Yeah. And like I said, as a player, he was second all time in scoring at the time of his retirement. Toe Blake, you definitely cannot deny what he did during his time. He's number 4 on my list.
Well, that's certainly a surprising pick. Not in a way like, it's like he didn't deserve it. It's just more of you look at it in Toe Blake, he was a big reason the Canadiens became the dominant franchise that they were from the 30s to I mean, we could just go to the 90s.
From basically the 1930s to the 1960s.
Well, I mean, then you also have to.
And I mean, they were still a dominant franchise in like the
No,
70s
but
too.
what I'm saying is that he set the mark.
Right.
For the
Yes. Yes.
being the dominant franchise. Now, to be fair, were there as many teams back then as there are now? No. So obviously, it was a little bit easier, so to speak,
Right.
to be able to do some of the things, but it's nothing short of a tremendous accomplishment nonetheless. And for him to be one of the few guys to not only be a great player, but to also be a great coach. Because there have been a lot of great Hall of Fame players in sports that became coaches that were just not very good, that just, they couldn't teach what they knew. A lot of the time, the great players that become great coaches are not the ones that were the most heavily gifted. They were the ones that understood the meaning, hard work, and the things that most human beings, we all can do. We all can, be just as good if we do, blank, blank, blank. It's just, that's what it is. So Toe Blake, he demanded a lot from his players. He wanted them to be constantly giving 100% effort. And if you weren't going to be doing that, it's not that you got benched. You just were never going to play again for at least the Montreal Canadiens. Like he would have gotten rid of you like that. It was just, that was it. There was no, sitting a guy for a game or two for him to be taught a lesson, unless it was probably maybe someone like, the Rocket, I guess.
Right.
Because obviously you're not gonna get rid of, the Rockets in that sense. But again, that's the big thing. So yeah, I mean, he was the first great coach, not just in the NHL, but certainly in the Canadiens' history, because I'm sure as a lot of hockey fans would say, the Montreal Canadiens, 24 Stanley Cup championships. They were a dynasty 3 or 4 times in their history over a 60 period, stretch, which is a phenomenal, feat. And, that's a really good pick for somebody that I don't think gets talked about enough because it was just so long ago. But
well, I definitely appreciate that. He is number 4 on my list, top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Now we're getting into the top 3. And at number 3, we have the late, great Don Shula. And may God rest his soul right now. This guy, we talked about him before. He pretty much is the only coach still to be associated with the term perfect. We all know what he did with the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Only undefeated season, still remains. And obviously they won a Super Bowl back then. But here's what he also accomplished. His 347 wins and disciplined style of coaching are just a couple of the key factors that made him so great. He was also named Sportsman of the Year in 1993. He reached 6 Super Bowls, winning 2 of them. And like I said, he completed the league's only fully perfect season with the 1972 Miami Dolphins. And had the Patriots not lost to the Giants in 2007, we'd be talking about an entirely different conversation. But Don Shula, we don't really need to say too much more about him. We've talked about him in nauseum. Well, actually, that's the wrong term. We talked about him and how his greatness affected the NFL. May God rest his soul. Don Shula is number 3 on my list.
We did a top 5, I want to say about a month or 2 ago. I think we did the top 5 greatest sports teams of all time. And
yes, we both mentioned the Dolphins, 1972.
Right. Well, obviously, what makes and what you can consider to say why Don Shula is the greatest coach of all time is squarely on the fact that he's the only undefeated coach in NFL history in the Super Bowl era. Because let's face it, there were a ton of undefeated teams before the first Super Bowl. Okay, it's just that unfortunately a lot of us only look at just the between 1966 and beyond, and after that, because it was like the Super Bowl era, as they call it.
Yeah.
Don Shula to be able to go 17-0 and to be absolutely perfect is incredible. And he never said and never strived to go undefeated. I mean, he talked about perfection. And perfection from the standpoint of making sure you understand your job and doing it almost perfect, or pretty much doing it perfectly. And it transpired to them being perfect. Now, interestingly enough, he nearly did it again the very next season in 1973. I think they only lost a game or 2 before winning the Super Bowl,
Right.
in 73. So it shows you that he could have easily done it 2 years in a row because he that's what he expected of his football team when he was there. And also, here's another thing. Don Shula has been able to embrace change within the league itself. So when he had the 72-73 Dolphins, they were more of a ground and pound team. Bob Greasy was a solid quarterback, but you had Mercury Morris, Jim Kick, you had Larry Zonka, you had the three-headed running back monster back then. You also had Paul Warfield out on the outside, but they were mostly give the ball there. Then he goes and plays in the Super Bowl again in I want to say it was 1984, I think it was 84. Yeah, it was 84 because it was I'm missing up. I'm thinking of 1980 82. Yeah,
82, yeah.
83, or it was around that time, because around that, those couple of years, because then the 49ers played in the Super Bowl against the Miami Dolphins. Actually, no, excuse me, 1982. Let me see, I'm trying to make sure I'm correct here. 1982.
It's all right.
The Dolphins played the Redskins, and the Dolphins had, I think, Danny Worley as their quarterback at the time. And Worley was much more of a, let's throw the football. So I think they were a little bit more balanced that year. And then he gets one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the position in Dan Marino by luck, because the Jets went with, Ken O'Brien over Dan Marino. He developed a passing attack where Dan Marino put up numbers that took a long time to be broken in many ways. So Don Shula was able to have success with different quarterbacks, different players in different eras, and the game constantly evolving. And he's one of those great coaches that doesn't get talked about enough. They still talk about Vince Lombardi. They talk about Bill Walsh. They talk about Tom Landry. They talk about Chuck Noll. They talk about John Madden, Bill Parcells, Joe Gibbs. But they don't talk about Don Shula enough, because I think the main part of it is that Don Shula didn't have a personality that was big like all those other guys. And he only won 2 Super Bowls and coached many more years after that, but never won another Super Bowl. But he did so many things. And guess what? He's still the only undefeated coach in the Super Bowl era. Bill Belichick was the closest one, but we still haven't had that yet. And that just goes to show you how tremendous of a coach, tremendous of a leader, and tremendous of a person that Don Shula was. So I definitely agree with that. Don Shula, in my book, until someone else can get an undefeated season, is, in my opinion, the greatest coach in NFL history.
Yep. Couldn't agree with you more. So quick recap here. Top 5 best coaches / managers of all time, according to yours truly. Number 5 is Bill Walsh. Number 4 is Hector Toe Blake. Number 3 is Don Shula. Number 2, Vince Lombardi. He may have only coached the Packers for 7 seasons, but come on. Do we really have to say any more about what he accomplished with the Green Bay Packers? Well, no, but I'm going to anyway. Let's just say he immediately left his mark. He won 3 straight league championships, 5 overall. He won the first 2 Super Bowls ever.
In a dominant fashion, by the way.
What's that?
In a dominant fashion. It wasn't.
Yep.
He kicked both the Chiefs' ass and the Raiders' ass in the first 2 Super Bowls.
Yep, in dominant fashion. So first 2 Super Bowls ever, and he won Coach of the Year in 1959 and 1961. And obviously, you have the Super Bowl trophy named after him, the Vince Lombardi trophy. But when you have a quarterback like Bart Starr in your era leading your team, I mean, do you really have to say any more about what Vince Lombardi accomplished? No, I think the numbers speak for themselves. He's number 2 on my list.
First of all, I'm assuming that you also said it because he is a Jersey guy, but I'm not going to be biased there. Funny enough, actually, you can go to where he was actually buried in Middletown, New Jersey.
Yep.
So his gravesite, I actually went with my dad a couple of years ago, and it was like a really it's a really surreal and very cool feeling. You don't realize it. But here's the thing, and I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson. Vince Lombardi coached in many different places before he got his chance with the Green Bay Packers. His first big break was when he went to the New York Giants. And you have to remember, the Giants of that era were one of the dominant football teams in the NFL. They were dominant. They had Frank Gifford, who was one of the greatest players of that era. You had other guys. And oh, by the way, Vince Lombardi wasn't the head coach. He was the offensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator was none other than Tom Landry.
Yep.
Think about that. You had two of maybe the top 5 greatest NFL coaches of all time. One of them coaching the offense and one of them coaching the defense. You had the most incredible minds of football on the same team. They did win an NFL championship, and honestly, had they stayed together, which you knew that wasn't going to happen, but if they did, it would have gone on. Vince Lombardi would have probably ended up becoming the head coach of the New York Giants had he not gotten the offer from Green Bay. Because I think that Vince Lombardi was showcasing that he could be the head coach, and that was eventually going to happen. But the Packers came in, an unknown franchise in the middle of nowhere, needed a head football coach, and Vince Lombardi was able to go in and devise his, offense and the Packers suite that everybody knows. And he had great players. He had Paul Hornung. He had Jim Taylor. He had Grabowski. And I'm talking about running backs because that was the main foundation of their team. He had one of the greatest offensive lines in NFL history. He had a guy like Chuck Mersine who came from the Giants and became a focal point in the second Super Bowl year. I mean, he had tremendous players, and he had a calming, leader in Bart Starr that just knew what to do. He was another coach on the field, and he did he did that. And, like you said, only 7 years because he was dealing with health issues. But let's talk about the fact that I think 6 months to a year later, after he left the Packers from being the head coach and also general manager, he went to Washington to be the head coach and general manager of the Washington Redskins for one season. And they had an incredible turnaround. And Vince Lombardi was able to turn Sonny Jurgensen into a tremendous quarterback, a guy who understood it. And unfortunately, cancer took over his body and he could not recover, and he ended up passing away. But I do believe that if Vince Lombardi had been able to stay alive and was healthy and was, doing well, I think he would have won a Super Bowl or two in Washington.
Absolutely, yes.
I really believe that because they were on the rise, you could tell. And that shows you the great coach that Vince Lombardi was. But forget about the X's and O's. I want everyone to understand that Vince Lombardi was one of the greatest leaders in the history of America, because this man understood how to treat everybody. He understood what it took to demand the best of an individual. He understood things outside of football. He brought in all these great quotes. This man went to church on a daily basis. He didn't just go on Sunday. He went every single day, because this man was a man of faith, this man was a man of family, and this man was a man of football. In that order, by the way. Football wasn't number one. It was like 3 or maybe even 4, okay? Vince Lombardi was one of the greatest leaders of all time. There was no question about it. It was just absolutely phenomenal. And if you listen and read his quotes, it's so impactful that you really have to sit there and think about it and really analyze what's going down. And I just think that he is just a tremendous person, Obviously, it's a shame that cancer took him away way too soon. I don't think he obviously would be alive today anyway, just because I think he would have been pushing 100 years old if he was still alive. But
it would have been nice, though.
It would have been nice for a lot of people to get to know him after football and to really learn a lot. It's one of those situations where a great leader and a great person with so much knowledge left our world way too soon. And, obviously he's still, recognized as one of the greatest coaches of all time. But in me, he's one of the greatest leaders of the human race of all time.
Couldn't agree with you more, my man. So he is number 2 on my list. Quick recap here. Top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Number 5, Bill Walsh. Number 4, Toe Blake. Number 3, Don Shula. Number 2, Vince Lombardi. And obviously, before we get to number 1, got quite a few honorable mentions here, so I'll go through them really, really quick. Neil, you brought up one of the names earlier, and he's an honorable mention. Tom Landry, former coach of the Dallas Cowboys, 2 Super Bowl championships, 5
I like that one.
What's that?
I like that one a lot. I said I like that one a lot is what I said.
There you go. 2 Super Bowl championships, 5 NFC titles, 13 divisional titles, a record 20 career playoff victories, and an all-time record of 270, 178, and 6. Oh, and by the way, he had 20 consecutive winning seasons from 1966 to 1985. I don't think I need to say any more about Tom Landry. He's one honorable mention. Here's another one that might actually surprise you.
For a long time, he was the only coach in Dallas Cowboys history.
Yep.
I mean, that's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Absolutely. Here's another one that may surprise you a little bit. And this guy is still coaching. Gino Auriemma, head coach of UConn women's basketball team. He's been there since 1985, and he is still going to this day. As of right now, he has 11 championships, a coaching record of, get this, 1,091 and 142.
Yeah.
This man only has 142 losses in his career. That's an 885 winning percentage. If that doesn't explain to you how dominant this man has been with this team, I have no idea what is. He has 6 undefeated seasons, and he's won countless Coach of the Year awards. So I feel bad for not putting him actually on the top 5, but he at least deserves an honorable mention.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's kind of like what Garrett said. I feel like he kind of took everything I was going to say, but I don't know. It's just, that's a good pick. Can't deny it. And I know how hard it is, because we're doing top 5, which makes it even harder. I think it would be easier if it was like top 10, but then again, we'd be here for like 4 hours.
I would say, yeah. We'd be here for 5 hours.
You feel like you're disrespecting him, in a way for not having the top 5, but he's still just a tremendous coach, no doubt.
No, yeah, absolutely. No disrespect to Gino. He is still kicking ass to this day.
I mean, he's just created, to me, he's one of the biggest reasons that people now watch women's college basketball more. I understand that people want to say, oh, it's not as entertaining because, like UConn is always really good. And it's like, I get that. But also, it makes people realize and look and say, these are some really good players.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of the dominant players in the WNBA went to UConn.
Yep.
Coincidence?
I think not.
And is it all because they're just super talented? No. It's also because Gino understood what it took for these players to give it their very best, to demand the best. And for him to still be kicking it now, and I think he's in his, late 60s?
I think so, yeah.
I'm telling you, this man's not going to stop coaching for another 10, 15 years. I think he's going.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be like John Wooden. He's going to coach for a very, very, very long time.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Here's another honorable mention. Another guy that's still coaching.
Ooh.
Greg Popovich. Popovich.
You mean Greg Popovich, the newest coach of the Brooklyn Nets, possibly?
Well, we'll see about that. But as we stand right now, he is still the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He's been there since 1996. He is a 5-time NBA champion, a 3-time Coach of the Year, a 4-time All-Star Game head coach. That's something people forget about. And he currently has the most wins in NBA history, regular season and postseason combined, with 1,447. And he is currently the longest tenured coach in all of sports as of right now. So Greg Popovich, excuse me, is another honorable mention. Here's another one. And these next two, I'm sorry, Neil, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, all I was going to say was just, Greg Popovich created a dynasty and a system in San Antonio that is giving him the success. I mean, the man went on a 22-year postseason streak, and it ended, obviously, this year.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that Greg Popovich never has taken credit publicly for what he's done. He always gives it to his players, and he always tells them, that they're the big reason that for all this success. And he had some of the greatest players to play. He had the Admiral, David Robinson. He had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Bruce Bowen, Kawhi Leonard for a while.
Oh.
He won a championship. And he had so many great role players as well that just came and not only did they play, they stayed there for a long, long time. And now Tim Duncan is an assistant.
Yep.
Would I be surprised if he if he took over for Greg Popovich when he retired?
Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
No, wouldn't surprise me because they want to keep that going.
Yep.
And it's just, I've seen so many of the players say they would love to play with Greg Popovich. And I think that's a big reason why he's been rumored to, why the Nets want to try to go get him, because, a lot of great players want at one point or another to have the opportunity to possibly go and play for Greg Popovich. And Greg Popovich is just not going to take no bullshit from anybody.
Absolutely.
He's not going to care about your feelings. He's going to be like, dude.
Yep. Just go out there and play basketball. That's it.
Right. Just do what I tell you to do. We're not doing this. He could keep ego. He could keep egos out the locker room. That's what he does.
Right. Yep.
So, that's a tremendous coach. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely
NBA.
tremendous. Absolutely. Here's another one. And these next two honorable mentions are managers. One, Bobby Cox, manager for the Atlanta Braves from 1978 to 1981, and then again from 1990 till 2010. Obviously, he's known for winning the World Series in 1995. He was a 4-time manager of the year and has a managerial record of 2,504 and 2001. He also is known for having the most ejections in MLB history, which is always very, very entertaining. That I don't know. I know it's in the 100s. I know that much. I know it's in the 100s. I know it's a lot. But he has the most ejections in history, and he was also a unanimous vote in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2014. Here is another one, and he's the last honorable mention. Also a manager, Joe Torre, best known for managing the New York Yankees from 1996 to 2007. He currently ranks 5th all-time in wins in MLB history with 2,326. Yeah. He is known for guiding the Yankees to 4 World Series championships. He won the Manager of the Year in 1996 and 1998 and was also a unanimous vote in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2014. So, once again, before we get to number one more quick recap here. Excuse me. Top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. Number 5, Bill Walsh. Number 4, Toe Blake. Number 3, Don Shula. Number 2, Vince Lombardi. Honorable mentions, Tom Landry, Gino Auriemma, Greg Popovich, Bobby Cox, and Joe Torre. Now, this person may actually surprise you a little bit of who's number 1. But in my personal opinion, this person absolutely deserves it. I did a ton of research on this. I got to tell you, Vince Lombardi was almost number 1 until I saw this person. And I said, you know what? This person is probably more deserving. No disrespect to Vince Lombardi, but in my opinion, this person deserves it more. At number 1 is the legendary, the late, great Pat Summitt. Pat Summitt is number 1 on my list. In case you don't know who she is, she was the head coach of the Tennessee Lady Volunteers from 1974 until 2012. She has the most wins in college basketball history with 1,098. She is an 8-time national champion. She was the Sports Illustrated Sportswoman of the Year in 2011. She was a 5-time Naismith Coach of the Year. Oh, and by the way, she got the freaking Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012. And oh, by the way, in 38 years as a coach, she has never had a losing season. Never.
Wow.
I don't think any more needs to be said about what Pat Summitt meant, not only to Tennessee, but to college basketball as a whole. She is truly the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion. She is deserving of number 1 on my list.
That is incredible. I mean, really, it's a shame that Pat Summitt was taken from us way too soon. I think she had cancer. I want to say
she had Alzheimer's.
No, she had Alzheimer's, even worse. It's trying to find the right words, I guess, to say. Again, women's basketball, particularly in college, is not seen in the same light as men's college basketball or just men's basketball in general. But Pat Summitt made the Lady Vols one of the greatest teams of all time in women's college basketball for so long. She developed great players. I mean, the biggest one you could think of is Candace Parker.
Yep.
I mean, Candace Parker would not be half the player that she is without Pat Summitt. And Pat Summitt was a very demanding coach. She pushed these women past their own abilities and made them into tremendous players. And she just, the fact that she goes that long without a losing season just shows you how much her players respected and understood what she was trying to teach them. And she wasn't teaching them to be great players. She was teaching them to be great women, just to be great people. So that was the ultimate goal of her. And I think she did that 100%. And she's not only one of the greatest coaches of all time, just very much like Vince Lombardi, she's one of the greatest leaders in the history of America. So.
Absolutely. So Pat Summitt is definitely deserving of number 1 on my list of the top 5 best coaches / managers of all time. And with that being said, Neil, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. So I think Jimmy said this before, early on when we started, and I'll just kind of reiterate it. When I did this list, I wasn't looking to try to compare one coach of a sport to another. So what I tried to do is I tried to find a coach from each of almost each sport and say that they were the greatest coach in my eyes of their sport. That's how I looked at it. So this is not an order of who I think is better than the other. This is just 5 people that I've listed, except maybe the last one. I think the last one I can say is number 1 for personal reasons. And I'll get into that when I get there. But
you do you, man. Go for it.
We'll start with number 5, and it's somebody you had mentioned in your list, and that is Don Shula. I don't really think there's much else I can add to what Don Shula. He's the only undefeated coach in the Super Bowl era, and he was able to constantly redevelop his coaching style based on players, based on the league changing, the game itself, and everything else. I think that just shows you the great coach he is. He kept adapting to his surroundings, the people that he was surrounded with, and everything like that. So Don Shula is on that list. I think he's the greatest coach of all time in the history of the National Football League, primarily because of the fact that he is the only undefeated coach.
Couldn't agree with you more.
I understand if you want to say Chuck Noll or Don Shula or even Vince Lombardi. I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just explaining my reason why I picked Don Shula. Now, I did have one baseball manager, and it's somebody, Jimmy, that I don't even think you would have ever guessed that I would have picked, and that is Joe McCarthy. Now, people might ask,
oh my God.
Well, Joe McCarthy, and this is going to be a bombshell, is the greatest manager in Yankees history. There is no debating on that.
What?
I'll explain. Let me explain. Joe McCarthy was a manager for 24 seasons, so nearly 2.5 decades. Okay. Pretty good job. In the 30s and 40s and all that, which, like you mentioned with Toe Blake, people don't talk about enough because
Right.
of the fact that,
No,
you
that's
know,
true.
it's
That's true.
obviously that long ago. Joe McCarthy, in 24 years as a manager, never had a losing season. Not a single one. Okay? And it was much easier back then to lose. So let's keep that in mind.
True.
Joe McCarthy won only 7 World Series. And yeah, I know that there are other managers that won, you know, more and did more and blah, blah, blah. Joe McCarthy won 1 World Series every 3 years. That's really impressive when you think about it. The Yankees were not the dominant franchise that everybody knows now before Joe McCarthy came to New York. Joe McCarthy was the manager of the Bronx Bombers for 16 seasons. Pretty impressive. If you ask me, I don't think any other manager of the Yankees has ever had that long of a tenure. I think Joe Girardi might be the closest. I could be wrong.
Yeah, Joe Girardi was there for 10 seasons.
Joe McCarthy had a career winning percentage of .615, which is the best by a long shot of any manager in baseball history with 2,000 wins or more. Also, Joe McCarthy was the manager of the Murderers Row. Are you familiar with Murderers Row, Jimmy? Are you familiar?
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody talk about Joe McCarthy? Do most people even know he was the manager? No, he doesn't get enough respect because he's overshadowed by the great players that he had. But Joe McCarthy, what he was able to accomplish as a manager, and particularly with the Yankees, is in my eyes the greatest manager to ever manage the New York Yankees. He is a big reason the Yankees became the dominant mythical franchise, if you want to say, of all time. You know, we talk about the ghosts of the past. You know, we talk about Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, all those great players. And, especially in the 90s, players were talking about the ghosts of the past. Joe McCarthy is the biggest ghost of Yankee history. Because without him, and people look, I'm not going to disrespect Casey Stengel because he did one hell of a job when he was with the Yankees and also when he was with the Mets too, albeit not as much, but still, nonetheless. But Joe McCarthy created the first dynasty in baseball and Yankee history, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when you have guys like Ruth Gehrig and Tony Lazzeri, Earl Combs, I mean, you kind of make a fair argument. You kind of make a fair argument. I can't necessarily disagree.
Well, but you sound like you don't agree with me saying he's the greatest manager in Yankee history. And I think part of the reason is because McCarthy's name is not big like Joe Torre, like Billy Martin, like Casey Stengel.
That's true. That's also true.
Those guys were successful, but none of them would have been able to understand what it meant to be a New York Yankee before Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy made the Yankees the dominant franchise that they are, even to, maybe not to this day, but certainly, for a long period.
Right.
The Yankees, for a long time before McCarthy, were not even the best team in their own damn city. You had the Brooklyn Dodgers. You had the New York Giants. But when Joe McCarthy came to the Yanks, he made them the dominant franchise of New York and the dominant franchise of baseball. But because it was in that very early period of the 1900s, well, not very early, but relatively early period.
Nobody talks about it.
Nobody knows because nobody gives a crap.
Right.
But Joe McCarthy is, without a doubt, in my opinion, hands down, the greatest manager in New York Yankees history by far.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I mean, like I said, you do make a fair argument. Like you mentioned Murderers Row, and I can't argue with you too much about that. It's just that, I haven't heard his name in God knows how long. And you know what, like you said, nobody really talks about how great he actually was in all seriousness. I mean, like I said, you got Ruth Gehrig, Earl Combs, Tony Lazzeri. I mean, you're talking about like 4 or 6 Hall of Famers right there.
You're talking about a lineup that from top to bottom was feared.
Right,
It
yeah.
wasn't like, oh, it's only the first 4 guys. No, it's like even if you get past the 4th hitter, you're still dealing with dominant players.
Yep.
It was a lineup that
Absolutely.
you just had to hope that you had the right stuff to fool them that day,
Yep.
which 95% of the time didn't happen.
Yep.
So Joe McCarthy is on that list. Now we'll shift to hockey, and in my view, possibly he didn't win all of his Stanley Cups as a coach. Let me just put that on the record quick, because I don't want people to tell me that I'm wrong from that standpoint. I want people to understand. To me, in my eyes, the greatest coach in NHL history is Scottie Bowman. Scottie Bowman won championships with multiple teams. He won cups with the Montreal Canadiens. He created the second dynasty, well, maybe like the third, now that I think about it, the second or third dynasty of the Canadiens, in the 70s. He went to the Blues, and I thought he was pretty solid, and he took the Blues to 2 Stanley Cup finals, by the way, in case anybody didn't know that.
Yep.
He then was an assistant and later became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins and won 2 cups. He was an assistant with the late, Badger Bob Johnson. And then he took over for him when, unfortunately, Bob Johnson had cancer and he could not coach. And he obviously passed away before, that season. And then he goes to Detroit. And with the Russian 5 of Sergei Fedorov, Igor Larionov, Slavov Fetisov, Kozlov, and why am I missing the last guy off the top? Konstantinov. That he created a dynasty in Hockey Town. He really did. From the mid-90s to the early 2000s, other than the New Jersey Devils, there was no other team in the NHL that was dominant like the Red Wings.
Yep.
The Red Wings got swept in 95 by the Devils, and that's why it was so big, because nobody expected the Devils were expected to get swept, and they ended up sweeping the Red Wings. But they go to 96, they get knocked out by the Colorado Avalanche in their first year of, technically of existence after they moved from Quebec.
Right,
and then they won cups in 97. They unfortunately had that horrible car crash with Konstantinov that pretty much ended his career. Thank God he survived, but it ended his career. They won a cup again in 98. And then they won a cup with the biggest amount of Hall of Famers of all time in 2002. I mean, you had
Dominic Hasek is one of them.
You had the Dominator, Steve Yzerman, Brendan Shanahan. You still had Sergei Fedorov. You had Brett freaking Hall, Luke Robitaille. You had Chris Chelios, Nick Lidstrom, a very young Pavel Datsyuk, and a very young Henrik Zetterberg.
Yep.
Who are both going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
By the way.
They should be, yes.
You had nearly 10 Hall of Famers and a Hall of Fame head coach. That is the greatest assortment of talented Hall of Famers on one team I have ever seen in the NHL, in NHL history. And he was able to win another Stanley Cup then, and then he retired from coaching, and he actually later on became an executive with the Chicago Blackhawks because his son is the general manager / part owner of the Chicago Blackhawks and won Stanley Cups in 2010, 2013, and 2015.
Yep.
And since that point, you know how many Stanley Cups that makes for Scottie Bowman? A whopping total of 17. There is no other person in hockey that has that many.
That's incredible.
That shows you the great hockey mind.
Well, I think John Beliveau is tied with him. I think he also has 17 cups total.
That might be true, but I think all as a player.
But other than those two, nobody has 17 Stanley Cups.
But Scottie Bowman, to win cups as a coach and also as an executive with multiple teams by mind you, and he coached in about 20 Stanley Cup finals. I don't think you could really say there wasn't a more dominant coach in hockey and a more dominant hockey mind than Scottie Bowman. So Scottie Bowman, to me, is in my opinion the greatest coach in NHL history.
Okay, fair enough.
based primarily on the fact that he won so many Stanley Cups.
Right.
And that's tremendous. I mean, half of the cup, it right now has his name on it. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there's that. So that's my third guy. The next guy, I'm actually going to go, and it's going to be a manager, but not a baseball manager. It's actually a football manager or soccer. Just to explain.
Okay.
And that is Sir Alex Ferguson, who is arguably the greatest manager in Manchester United history and one of the greatest managers in Premier League history. Sir Alex Ferguson created a dynasty, a dominant squad for many years at Old Trafford. And he had some of the great players like Wayne Rooney. Oh, he had a young Cristiano Ronaldo who turned him into the player that he eventually became, and many others like that. In his coaching career, managerial career, he won 13 English top flight honors. He managed nearly 30 years at Old Trafford. 30!
Wow.
Which is unheard of. He won 2 Champions League titles with, which makes you the team of Europe, and he won 5 FA Cups when the FA Cup was much more considered than it is now.
Right.
The FA Cup, for a long time before the Premier League technically existed, because before the Premier League kind of existed, it was more of just the English Football League. So they,
Got it.
the FA Cup was it. And he won 5 of them.
I gotcha.
And he made Manchester United one of the most recognizable clubs in the world. And he was one of the first managers that was very big on having their preseasons be played in the United States. He wanted people in the United States to learn the sport, to learn about Manchester United, to learn about the beautiful game that is the game of football. And he was tremendous. And he's a sir. How many coaches in America can be called sir? He was
Not that
knighted
many.
as a sir by the Queen of England herself. Sir, you don't say Alex Ferguson. You say Sir Alex Ferguson, because he demands. He doesn't demand respect, but he gets it.
Right.
And Cristiano Ronaldo will tell you straight up that he was the greatest manager that he ever played with. And he's played with some great ones like Zinedine Zidane, Carlo Ancelotti. But Sir Alex Ferguson made Cristiano Ronaldo. He made him the great player that he eventually became. He won a Champions League and an English title with Cristiano Ronaldo. Sir Alex Ferguson, who luckily he was in the hospital, I think about a year ago, and luckily he's okay. So that was good. There's no other manager in Premier League history and English football that I think has a bigger reputation and a bigger respect from everyone, more than Sir Alex Ferguson. And that's why there is so much pressure when you become the manager of Manchester United to live up to what Sir Alex Ferguson was able to accomplish while being at Old Trafford. That's why a lot of guys have not been able to survive there for, long enough to accomplish, because he just was so incredible with his tactics. He made an attacking system. And we talk about coaches adapting, to their surroundings and the players that they have. Sir Alex Ferguson was the biggest guy when it came to that. He constantly changed formations based on the players that he had. So when he had the likes of Rooney and Ronaldo, it went from being let's play a little bit more defense and really try to get about ball possession to, oh no, we're just going to flat out attack. We're just going to flat out attack and start scoring 3-4 goals a game. That's what happened. So I think in terms of, the Premier League and English soccer, and even honestly European football, he is up there as one of the greatest football managers of all time. And mind you, there are a huge amount of managers in different leagues, in different clubs like Barcelona, Real Madrid, everywhere that are also tremendous. But I think Sir Alex Ferguson had a bigger impact on not just football in the UK, not just football in Europe, not just football in the United States even, but football in the world. You could go all over this country, this world, and mention Sir Alex Ferguson to people. I would tell you 95% of the time people would know who you're talking about, and they know what he accomplished. So if that's not what a a great coach and a great person is, I don't know what is. But so yeah, I don't have any honorable mentions because there's just way too many of them. There's just way too many for me to.
Fair enough.
But my number one, this is the only person I would put number one. This is the only person I would actually rank. This guy has such a profound impact on not only my life, but certainly like my dad's life, to the point where we actually have, his pyramid of success, just kind of ruining it, breaking it for everybody in our house. He had a quote that said, "Make every day your masterpiece." What does that mean? It means live your life.
I know who you're going with. Where you're going with this.
Don't say it. Make every day your masterpiece. Give it 110%. Be productive. Accomplish something. Be kind. Do what you have to do. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. That's what he was about. I'm talking about the Wizard of Westwood, the greatest college basketball coach of all time, and one of the greatest men of all time in the history of the human race. And that is the legendary UCLA men's basketball coach, Mr. John Wooden.
There you go.
I don't even have to go into this because his numbers speak for himself, but I'll do it anyway. He finished with a coaching record of an incredible 664 and 162. He lost a measly 162 games. Wow. He won more than 500 games than he lost. That's absolutely incredible. He coached some of the greatest players, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was Lou Alcindor at the time, Bill Walton, and many other guys at UCLA, and won a record 10 NCAA men's basketball championships. But it wasn't the coaching that makes John Wooden great. It's the pyramid of success. It's the teacher that he was that made him so phenomenal and made him one of the greatest human beings. This man wanted to teach his players and the students that he had, because he was also a teacher at UCLA. So it's not like, he wanted these people to be the best version of themselves day in and day out, to be the best, most respected human beings ever. And you look at what Lou Alcindor was able to do and make his mark on social justice, even way back then with Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Bill Russell, and all those guys. A big reason he was like that was the influence that John Wooden gave him. The influence of being the best person you could be and learning that at the end of the day, all you have is your personal integrity. John Wooden was all about that. He knew at the end of the day what he was all about. He knew what these players were all about, and he wanted to make them and mold them into tremendous men, tremendous human beings, tremendous fathers, husbands, co-workers, teammates, everything. And his whole pyramid of success was about doing your absolute best to become the best version of yourself. So John Wooden was a great coach, but a way better man. And that he is impactful in my life, even now. And I never saw him coach. I never met him, so I'm not going to pretend like I know him. But from everything that I've learned and everything that I've seen, I don't think you could think of a better coach for not just sports, but a coach of life and how to live it properly and how to be you better than John Wooden.
Wow, that's actually incredible. I could not agree more. It really is a crime that I didn't have him on my list, and I apologize. I don't mean any disrespect to him, because I 100% agree with you. I probably should have put him somewhere on my list, but like I said, this was tough. It was really, really tough, and I actually did consider John Wooden, but you know me, I do my research, and I don't mean any disrespect to the man, because he was an absolutely phenomenal human being. But I stand by my top five. Neil, you stand by your top five, and I happen to agree with your list. It's absolutely phenomenal, and you out there, if you agree or disagree with any of our lists, or if you want to leave your own list, let us know on Twitter at BottomlineWMCX, at the NVP Show, and on Instagram at BottomlineWMCX, hashtag BottomLine. Voice message on Anchor, the app, or at Anchor.fm. And please subscribe to YouTube and leave a like and a comment down below if you're watching. Helps out tremendously. And please make sure you also subscribe on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just include my first name, Jimmy, when searching for this podcast. And by the way, peep the shirt that I'm wearing, because at the time of this recording, August 27th, 2020, our good friends in First to 11 have a brand new cover coming out at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And they also have their live stream at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on their YouTube channel. So please, we encourage you to go watch that and check out their new cover. And before we wrap things up, I've got trivia for you, my man.
Oh, it's about time.
I was
going to bring it up. I was going to see if you would remember.
Trust me, I did. So this is going to be a more recent trivia question. So
shoot me.
It's a little unusual topic for me to bring up, but it's a baseball trivia question.
Shoot.
So a couple days ago, August 25th, 2020, Lucas Giolito threw a no-hitter for the Chicago White Sox against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So with that being said,
I don't want to talk about that.
But my question to you is, can you name the last two pitchers for the White Sox to throw no-hitters?
Two.
The last two.
Two. Well, do perfect games count to this degree? I mean, because, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because there's a difference between a perfect game and a no-hitter. I mean, I know a perfect game is also considered a no-hitter.
These two had perfect games, yes.
Right. Okay. Well, one of them I know for a fact is Mark Burley.
Yes, that's the gimme. That's the gimme.
I believe he threw a perfect game against the Tampa Bay Rays back in 2009 or 10.
2009.
2009. I was the other one.
That's the gimme, Mark Burley.
Yeah. No, I figured. Probably have to go back. Is it? I really don't know this one. This is interesting. Yeah, no, I'm stumped with the second one. Who's the second one?
I'll give you a hint. It's within the last decade.
In the last decade. What, James Shields?
No. You're going back to 2012 with this guy.
2012. He threw a perfect game?
He did throw a perfect game.
Well, it wasn't Mark Burley again.
It was not him, no.
That would have been impressive.
But fun fact, Mark Burley threw a no-hitter in 2007, and then he threw a perfect game 2 years later.
Right.
But it's not him again.
I figured. Yeah, I know. I really am stumped. Who's the other guy?
The second guy is a man by the name of Philip Humber. He threw the third perfect game in White Sox history and the 21st in MLB history. He did it in a 4-0 victory at Seattle against the Mariners. So Mark Burley and Philip Humber is the answer.
Did he also pitch for the Reds at some point in his career? I think he did.
He pitched for the Mets, the Twins, the Royals, the White Sox, and the Astros. Not the Reds.
Okay. But yeah, I think that was a go. I mean, Mark Burley was a little bit more of a given for most people.
Yeah.
Because of he's it's no disrespect to Philip Humber.
No, right.
The name doesn't stand out to you unless if you're a diehard White Sox fan, you probably knew the answer.
Right? Yeah.
There's no question about it. Like it's if you're a diehard fan of the team and you know your history of your team very well, you would know that.
Right.
Or if you were watching the game, they might have said it.
Yeah.
They might have said, "Oh, it's the first no-hitter since Philip Humber threw a perfect game in 2012."
Yeah.
Like other than that, I don't think most people would have known. But that was a really good one because I was, obviously I was gonna be half right.
Yeah.
I was expecting you to say, "Can you name the last one?" Which I actually would have been wrong anyway. Because I would have said Mark Burley said it's actually not, and then I would have.
It's all right.
But you said the last two to kind of give me a break.
Yeah, I just wanted to take it easy on it just
Right.
once. But anyway, all joking aside, that'll wrap it up for us for another week of this podcast. Neil, enjoy the rest of your week and your
Thank
weekend.
you.
I'm looking forward to doing it all again next week, my man.
Same here, my man.
All right, dude. For Neil Villapiano, I'm Jimmy Finizzi. This is the Bottom Line Podcast. See you in the next episode. Peace out.